Hey everybody, this is Jason Jeffries for the Alliance Project. We got Joseph Reyna here, author of the book Incredulous, and we're going to go ahead and have him tell you a little bit more about his book and what it's about. So, Joseph, how are you doing?
Doing great, thank you. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you for coming on and reaching out to us. There's my dogs on time as usual. They always bark. But,
That's true.
Yeah, it's live action, though, for you. So if you'd like to tell us a little bit more about yourself in the book, we're interested to hear it.
Okay, well, the book started out as research concerning the crucifixion of Christ and the effects that the moon had during that time. According to a physicist who looked into it, the reports were showing that the moon had left orbit that night. There were reports of legends of it. In Asia, the moon was rising and then went down because Passovers are held during full moons. And on that day, the moon covered the sun at noon, roughly, caused a massive earthquake, and stayed in that position for over 3 hours. Historians from that region wrote about it, caused earthquakes throughout that entire region. Then the moon left and returned to the other side of the world for that Passover night, and it caused a second eclipse, a very blood-red eclipse. Having caused 2 earthquakes, it would have been very red from the dust in the air. But it fulfilled the prophecy in the Bible about Joel and the sun growing dark at noon, the moon being turned to blood. That's why when Peter repeated that during the Pentecost 50 days later, 3,000 people who had been there and witnessed it realized what it meant. It was one of the last signs that this was their Messiah. I discovered a lot of other things too. The Jews were not waiting for one individual who was the Messiah. They were waiting for 2. There always had to be 2, one from the tribe of Aaron, one from the tribe of David, and John the Baptist was the other one. So to create Jesus, before Jesus, and a lot of people would know about these, the Savior gods, who born the Virgin Mother, December 25th, pretty much did everything Christ is said to have done. These individuals who worship these guys, they started infiltrating the church. And Peter and Paul warned against this. They said, do not believe these individuals. Christ was born of the line of David according to the flesh, meaning he was human. He wasn't demigod the way Hercules would be a demigod. Anyway, that was very important. You had to be human to do. But yeah, that fascinated me. And what fascinated me was that the moon itself, the reports, the books I've read on it, Our Mysterious Spaceship Moon, that the moon was artificial and much older than our entire solar system. And it was too large to be held in orbit, and it moved in too perfect position, and the entire composition of the moon was unlike anything on Earth. So that just kind of stayed in the back of my mind. I didn't know what to do with it, really. But lately, if you've been watching the problems with times of the sunrise and the moonrise, the moon was as late as 2 hours one day, and that should have caught people's attention. Also, the sun was off by, I believe, 17 degrees according to WSO on the summer solstice. And that's what all these, Graham Hancock spoke of this, all these ancient monuments that were left behind for us, they were warnings. This is going to happen again. Keep track of where the sun is. When it starts deviating, get ready, because that's when things might go wrong. And the same thing with all the desert cultures here in America. They've got those 3 giant stones that cast shadows, and they've got that helical symbol on the wall. And it says if the sun ever strikes this, and we've gone out of kilter, basically. And it's time. So these are the times they were all speaking of. And I've actually photographed this object in the sky 2 months ago. I was in Blanco, Texas, the day before my book was released on June 12th, and I took a picture of it as the sun was setting. There was a video on YouTube. This guy has some blue sunglasses, the ones with blue reflective material. Yeah. And he said, look, I'm going to show you. You could see there was nothing. You couldn't see it in the sun, but as soon as you put the sunglasses there and put the camera behind it, it was there. And I've got some really nice glasses with the gold, the eagle eyes. Couldn't see it with that. You can only see it with those blue ones. I've got the lens, the welding lens protectors. I couldn't see it with that. And I moved the camera in all directions to make sure it wasn't some sort of glare, and it was not. And it matches where everybody else has been seeing evening at about 10:30, 11 o'clock for that time period. I know there's other objects up there, and they only shine when the sun hits them at the right time. I thought I would be shocked. I really did when I actually got to see it. It was a little bit of shock. I think I was laughing a little bit hysterically for a while because it was like, holy crap, it's real. There is some information, though, in an encyclopedia called the New Illustrated Encyclopedia of Science and Invention. I don't know if you've looked that one up. Most universities have a copy of it in Book 18, page 2488. It has a diagram of the Pioneer satellites.
Mm-hmm.
These Pioneer satellites were launched in opposite directions, and they had the helium-3 telescopes on board, and they were able to detect this object. It was a billion miles out of Pluto back in '83 when they took that picture.
And Voyager as well. Voyager as well. I wanted to add that. We have a little lag here, so I'm sorry.
The Russians, I haven't been able to track that one down. One of their satellites picked it up as well. It was out in that region. They actually picked up the planet. They were very close to it by accident. And, of course, they're building all their underground bunkers. And then there was also, well, let's say it's not coming. There's not any really hard evidence for it other than that. Why would the government be building so many underground bunkers and be missing so many trillions of dollars? The bullets they bought, 1.2 billion hollow points. I know a marshal who was reinstated and issued 300 of these hollow points with a new weapon and told, you will be shooting civilians to get out of hand. This is where you've got to be on this range. Within 2 hours, you've got to get to your location, hold down the fort until the army gets there. And he's been on standby for over a year. So he's 70 years old. They're desperate. Anyway, those bullets, if you were fighting a war in Afghanistan, you could fight a war for 3.5 years with that amount of bullets.
Yeah.
And I was sergeant in the Marine Corps. We did not shoot people with hollow points. It's against the Geneva Convention. You use a full metal jacket where the name comes from that movie. Hollow point will definitely do some damage. And that's what they want.
You're maiming people at that point. You're not injured. You're not killing them. You're maiming them. And I mean, you may kill, but your intent is to hurt them. You know.
Yeah.
And
anyway, so all that points to this direction, and I do hope it shows up in the sky soon. I really do. A lot of people are expecting it to be visible by August, because as soon as it shows up, Cliff High's research with webbots, and they've been getting he's been way off lately, poor guy. The timelines are shifting too fast. And I was talking about shifting timelines about a year and a half before anybody else. I started hearing it on the web. I was talking to friends of mine. I'll give you an example of a shifting timeline. It's like a railroad track. We're going down to San Francisco or toward the West Coast on this railroad track. And then the rails are shifted, the lines are shifted, and we go on a new rail. Now we're heading up further up the coast.
Like a time paradox.
Right. Well, when Obama got elected, that night he got elected, it felt strange. There was a weird electrical sensation in the atmosphere. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel like it had happened. It was just a weird disconnect. That was a time shift and a shift in our timeline, because they had fooled most of the world, not just Americans, but the Muslim world and several other world countries who honestly had hope and believed things might really change. You can't do that to humans. You can't give them hope, because when you do that and their minds unite all at once on live television, frequency, it amplifies and it just raises and strengthens the electromagnetic field of the earth that they would have been able to measure. It would have been incredibly more powerful. And when you do that, the timeline shifts. So now all their great projects and plans don't seem to work. Ebola, none of that works anymore. And I discovered that these things are what are fascinating the off-worlders with humans. How can humans do this? This is the power of a god. You know, they don't have those powers. And I never understood. I thought being telepathic, being in their cultures was great. I did a meditation one time where I went to one of their cultures because I want to understand, why do they think we're so great here? I don't get it. And what I was shown was that their worlds are more, let's say, just a simple desert-like, or very simple ecological. You don't have a massive diversity of grasses, trees, insects, birds. Earth seems to have that because of the moon orbiting it, the tidal waves we have, and just all of the different civilizations that contributed to it.
Yeah.
So we have incredible abundance of species and life on Earth. These other worlds don't seem to have that. And everybody's telepathic. When you meet someone, they instantly know everything about you, but it's not a whole lot to know, really. And you live 1,000 years. Give me an example of what I would be doing. I have a degree in electrical engineering, but none of that is necessary. It would just be basic electrical repair. So I'd be kind of a handyman in the same as one village or a small town. You don't have massive metropolitan cities. They don't need them. And you don't have as big a population on these worlds as we have because they're unnecessary. So I would go and repair someone's switch that broke and maybe change out some light bulbs, add a new lamp or something like that. That would be my job for the day. Yeah. At the end of the day, I'd go and check in to the local area where I would go to rest, because you don't own a house, you don't own the clothing, you don't own anything. You're like an insect within a colony. And that was the first impression I got. You get your new clothes given to you, where you're going to rest. And this pretty much goes on forever. There's no direct TV, there's no novels, there's no any type of entertainment, because that's a waste of time, not contributing to the greatness of the whole. If you were on the side, you grab the ball, called the basketball, and start teaching people how to do that, they'd kind of go surround you and talk to you and try and encourage you to come back, to help everybody, because this is a waste of time. People aren't going to sit around and watch this. It's not contributing to the whole. So you go 1,000 years doing this. Incredibly boring. Let's say you marry someone and they're also a handyman or handy person. You travel to similar cities and stay together. When you have a child, that child is removed from you as soon as it's weaned, and it's not something like socialist, like the state is doing that. They are actually trying to do the best for both you and the child. One, it makes you more productive. You're not having to be slowed down by a child, and two, they're very telepathic, so they're going to work with this child and give it everything it needs to succeed in whatever this child feels it is best qualified to do. And that's what these worlds are like. So to be here and have all this entertainment, I finally understood, why would so many humans volunteer to come to Earth at a time when the apocalypse is going to happen and become cannon fodder? Well, they get to sit on their butt, watch all these movies, play great video games, and have a great time before it happens. But I've also discovered I don't think the apocalypse is going to happen. We seem to have shifted past that with the vibration of Earth going higher. Anyway, back to the book. I discovered that during the time of Christ was actually guilty. And I was told this in meditation. It took me years to discover what he was guilty of. I could not find it. I don't want to ruin it in the book, but when Nixon was pardoned, I'm pretty sure he wasn't guilty and never went to trial. I mean, he wasn't innocent, never went to trial, but he was pardoned, and it's because he was most likely guilty. Billy the Kid wanted a pardon from the governor, not because he was innocent, but because he was guilty. So pardons are for when you're guilty. And Christ was guilty of a crime against the emperor, sedition against the emperor, and that was punishable by crucifixion. So the arrest was actually a Roman arrest, not the Jewish arrest. And this guy who was a Supreme Court justice for the Israelites, he wrote a book, and the thing was massive. And the way I came across the data, the information for the research for the work, once I started deciding this is what I was going to do. I could be driving past the bookstore. There's a lot of half-price bookstores in San Antonio, Texas, and has a lot of universities downtown. So I find these books, I take a pull, like, okay, there's something there, kind of dowsing. And I would start walking around, and I'd feel which book it was, and I just pulled it right off the shelf. And I'd feel that was the one I wanted. And it pretty much took all the money I had in my pocket at the time to buy it. And after I bought it, I would have spent a lot more money if I knew what was in that book. But this guy was really dry reading, like reading the IRS tax code. So I started closing my eyes and just running my hands over the pages. And later I saw this in the movie Constantine, where that guy's going to the newspaper. Mm-hmm. And eyes don't flutter or anything like that. I just kind of get a tug, and then I'll open my eyes and read. And then I'll highlight all that area, put it into my notes, and mark the page down. And what I found out, what he was saying, was that why would they follow every single law they had? Why would they, if they were trying to railroad Christ, why would they be following all the laws as strictly as they could? The false witnesses. He explained what a witness was. Back then, they didn't have police officers to arrest people. You did it as a witness. as a witness, you would see someone doing something wrong and you had to stop them. Excuse me, I think you've got this wrong. You might want to check your source again. If you continue doing it, now I've got to take you before the priest, and they'll straighten you out a little bit, explain to you what you're doing wrong. Because I believe I can do it by myself. I have to have a second witness who saw this. So now you come with us, we take you, and we explain to the priest what's going on. You actually get 30 pieces of silver for our trouble. There's like it's just a small coin, less than month's wages. And these particular witnesses, they each said something similar, but it was different. Now, if they did not both hear him say it on the same day, at the same location, about the same subject, then they're considered false witnesses because their testimonies don't match up perfectly. They weren't lying. The testimonies didn't match, so they couldn't be used. And you need to have two witnesses to make the conviction. During the arrest, this particular individual who wrote this book said that it was a Roman arrest by a Roman tribune with a cohort under his command. And cohort today means like your gang of buddies. But the Roman legions were broken up into 10 cohorts, 6,000 men, 10 cohorts, 600 men apiece, each commanded by a tribune. So one tribune with 600 men was what arrested Jesus. And the only Bible that mentions that actually has the word tribune with cohort, that I know of right now, is the Catholic version, the one translated by Jerome.
The Catholic, just not to interrupt you there, but the Catholics seem to have their own, like, almost rebellious against what's going on, like their own little sect of, like, truth in their own way when you're looking at it. Because I know a lot of people that in the Catholic community that seem to follow Planet X, Nibiru, Wormwood, and they're very open-minded, and they don't, I don't know. I'm just, so you have something there, but go ahead.
Yeah, and the book that Wormwood is mentioned in the Bible, it's called The Destroyer by Jeremiah. The planet that was destroyed on the side of Jupiter, that's mentioned in the Bible, that was destroyed by a dragon, and this planet is called a dragon. And the word dragon is actually a corruption of the Semitic word Dagon, which means the dwelling place of God. And that's where the Annunaki lived, so that was the dwelling place of the gods, and it was like a big red giant dragon.
A constellation in the sky. Yeah. When you look at a lot of the cultures, they talked about it because when they were, from their perspective, I believe they had 14 constellations if they were on Nibiru, but we had 12, and theirs would be the 13th when it came close enough. And it was very interesting to see all that confusion in the different cultures, but it came to light as you start to do your research. But yeah, I'm really interested in your book. I'm gonna have to pick up a copy, actually.
Thank you. Yeah, so it turns out that this tribune arrested him, but he needed a witness, someone to identify Christ. And there are, in the Quran, it mentions Judas. It mentions Jesus and Mary far more than the Bible does.
Yeah.
It says that Judas looked a lot like Jesus in mannerism and speech. And in the Gospels, when they start naming these disciples, the first two Gospels, written about 30 years before Luke, they mention only one Judas. But after the resurrection, there was another Judas, apparently, who didn't kill himself and was doing all these miracles. So they had to add a second name of Judas to the list of disciples at Luke. And that was Judas. He didn't kill himself. He was actually the identical twin brother of Jesus. His nickname was Thomas. Thomas is the word twin. It's not a name. And they've always known that the word Thomas is a word twin. In Spanish, we say cuate, twin. And other cultures say the same thing. Anyway, Didymus means the double or the duplicate, and this twin was called double or the duplicate. So right away, if you do the math, you realize you're missing a disciple. If Judas was also Thomas. If you remember when supposedly Judas had killed himself, Jesus appears to the disciples. Thomas isn't there. Well, Judas has touched a body, a dead body, because he helped identify Christ and helped get him off the cross and stuff. So he's got to do a cleansing for 7 days. He can't return until the 8th day, and the 8th day is when Thomas comes back. So it's the same person, and there's more than enough evidence for that. I refuse to write the book unless I could get at least 80% of the information going right back to the Bible. You open it up, it's right there.
Yeah.
Da Vinci Code, he did a great job, but he used a lot of sources that they could easily shoot down. I went, okay, shoot down your King James. That's what I want you to do.
Yeah.
Because it's all in there.
Yeah.
And one of the most fascinating things I found out that the crucifixion did not happen on Good Friday. It happened on a Wednesday 2 years before. Because when I was growing up, I'm a lot older. I'm actually a senior citizen. They always said Jesus died in the year 33. When they do the math, and now they have better record keeping, they realize that would be a 5-year ministry. He would have had to die in 31. So now all the new encyclopedias and on the web, you'll find that they're pretty sure that he died in the year 31.
Yeah, I mean, I believe the research used to say 28 AD if it was anything pre-02.
When he started,
yeah.
when he began. Yeah. So 31 would put it at about 3 years.
Exactly.
The years 31 and 32 are missing from the Roman records. They're not there. The reason is because the earthquake that took place, the moon moving out of position. Also, eclipses were feared by all. The Babylonians tracked them because they feared them. The Romans tracked them. And you had dual emperors. You had one emperor, and then you had a second emperor that was filled in. The main emperor, the real emperor, he knew the schedule on these eclipses. The other emperor, the one who got to sit in, he didn't know the schedule of eclipses. He just happened to be sitting on the throne every time there was an eclipse, and of course he had to be sacrificed because the gods had to be appeased. And that's why there were two. Yeah. Anyway, this was an unscheduled one, and they all mentioned that. All the historians mentioned this unscheduled eclipse. But eclipses meant the death of a king. So here's the entire universe saying, here's the king of kings. You know, not just a real quick 7-minute eclipse. It's that's about what all they last. This thing was in position, and it's all it could be in position as the Earth is rotating for Israel to have got caught at noon, and for that eclipse to stay in that same position. Anyway, if it was a massive hollowed-out spacecraft, like the evidence suggests, then they would have easily been able to orbit it around. Also, there are paintings in Sakobo. There's behind the altar there. They've got the sun and the moon above the crucifixion, and there's someone piloting the moon. It's kind of like flying away from the sun, and it makes it look kind of like a UFO in a way. But you can tell it is the moon.
Yeah, I've actually made diagrams on this because for something of that size on that day specifically, because it was, the day before it was Passover Eve, and it was supposed to be a full moon, and for the sun to be 3.5 hours gone, I mean, that's a pretty big object, and it has to be pretty close, you know what I mean?
Closer than it should have been. That's why it caused so many earthquakes.
I mean,
it blocks more the sun than normal.
I believe it appears in, is it Chinese record that they had earthquake over there, and the stars appeared bigger, or what was it? I can't remember. They had a very intricate record that went with around the day of the crucifixion. I thought that was really weird.
The reported it as well.
Yeah.
And the legends of the moon rising and going back down only appear in Asia. That's where it would have been a full moon when it actually
happened. So that's probably exactly what I was thinking of when you're just reiterating what you were thinking of, but I seen it, seen the references. That's very neat.
My records, what I've seen, the moon came into orbit about 12,000 years ago during the invasion of the reptilians, right about the time the Annunaki were about to leave. There were 7 of them. They called them war carriers, and the moon is the largest one of them. One was destroyed when it was captured and piloted into that other world, so the reptilians couldn't get their hands on the technology there. So there's 6 left. Io, the one around Saturn, that one with the ridge, that's one of them. There's several others out there also that are artificial. So when the reptilians bring in a massive armada, that's what they bring in those, and they open them and get out. And because they protect their DNA from change so much, like the shockwave that's coming, inside the moon there's a core that's 22 to 25 miles thick, solid iron. So that will protect them from this synchrotronic radiation that's changing our DNA right now.
Yeah, it'd have to be that thick just to almost equate the pressure, because if it wasn't made out of diamond or titanium or some alloy that we didn't know, they would have to make a really thick, solid steel wall. That's it. Period. And you look at the damage on the moon. It only goes so deep. Think about that. I mean, the evidence speaks volumes. in any any culture before that, even with when they didn't really have references or maybe written records, but they had, verbal, the ways they passed on information. They didn't speak of the moon before about, I think, 11,800, 11,900 years ago, roughly. And yeah, you're right on. All your research is kind of matching and syncing right up with mine. So it's great to.
I have a friend who has a tremendous amount of memories of being in Atlantis. She's kind of very fond of that. And I took her aside one time. I said, "This is really important, really important. I need you to close your eyes. I need you to focus on your memories of Atlantis. Do you see the moon?" And she says, "I see a moon, but I know it's an artificial 5-mile moon." And then her eyes open and her mouth dropped. She goes, "There's no moon." And so she thought maybe she'd been hallucinating all this. And I said, "No, there was no moon. You're okay."
Yeah. It was, when you really think about it, well, what I was trying to explain in a previous conversation I had was, I believe their civilization, when they came here, they were kind of the rogues. They ran and they were having a falling out, and they did either a false landing on Tiamat or whatever, but it became destroyed. Marduk destroyed it and quarantined the earth, essentially, is the way you look at it. And that way the rogues, the fallen ones, the ones who were cast down, however you want to look at it, kind of were trapped here, essentially, and tried to rebuild their technology.
That's exactly what happened. It's a little different than that, though. The large planet was destroyed. Earth was formed on it.
Tiamat, right? And we were formed from, kind of like plate tectonics.
That's the way that was still intact.
Yeah. You don't see those on any other planets, so that's definitely a huge point, because you could think about it. You could date the objects on the surface, but that wouldn't have anything to do with the age of the formation of this ball of matter.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
The dinosaurs, where they were on that world, the bigger world with far more oxygen, 50% oxygen on it than we have.
Brilliant. I never thought of it like that. See, when I always thought about people, the evolution of birds, why do they get wings? And that was always the problem. Like, how do they get these wings, man? Like, what's making them just jump off cliffs or whatever? And then you think, well, wait, they were just kind of like the fish of the sky. The mass or the gravity wasn't as heavy at that point, maybe, and they were kind of swimming through the air, essentially, and the the fish swam through the denser water. It just made sense to me at that point. I don't know.
The shock that I spoke of, we get hit with it every 26,000 years. Paul Laviolette wrote a book called Earth on Fire, and he's documented this in the core of the Earth. When you hear those mammoths that were flash frozen, I've done a lot of research on those mammoths. The skin of the mammoths, when they were found, they have no oil receptors, little pores for oil, the way a snow fox would, or an animal that's designed to be in the Arctic. Their skin would dry up. A sheep would have a better chance of being in the Arctic than a mammoth. They're just not designed for that weather. Also, they're 3 times larger than a regular elephant. The flash freeze one that you can still sell the meat in the restaurants of France today, that's an incredible amount of temperature. What they don't mention, and this is what they found out in the Horizon Project, was that in the airways of these mammoths, there was cosmic dust. So now you start getting astrophysicists involved, and in order to get that much cosmic dust into the airway, you'd have to peel back a third of the atmosphere. So if the Earth was actually ripped apart away from the other world, and you got an opening space, you would have that much temperature drop. You'd have all the large herbivores, saber-toothed tigers, the giant sloths, they all died at that same time. 32 species of the dire wolf, all these really large, and then you've got the black mat that covers most of the world, especially the North America side. I mean, all the Americas. It's a layer of soot that just everything was burned from one end to the other, and it's dated back about that time during that destruction.
Yeah, I mean, during
the.
You go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
In the Horizon Project, he asks Brent Miller, that's his name. He asks, what evidence do you have for continental drift of Pangea? They said, well, the tectonic plates are moving at 13 millimeters a year. Divide that into the distance, we come up with 65 million years. Well, that's pretty flimsy evidence. Let's take some core samples. When they took the core samples, the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean were roughly the same age. And the Atlantic should be much younger if the Pacific was already in existence.
Yeah.
So that also adds, it all fits. It becomes a little disconcerting. Everything starts to fit. The moon, there's only a quarter inch of that dust on the moon. And that's exactly how much dust there would be if the moon was only in orbit for 12,000 years. Otherwise, if it had been here from the beginning of creation, it should be about 100 feet of it. And there were reports that they were concerned the astronauts would land in this and never be able to take off. They would drop down about 100 feet.
That'd be crazy. Yeah, when you think about it, all the evidence adds up. I mean, think about the ancient and even modern accounts of fish raining down from the sky, and they try to explain it away with, rainstorms, this and that. But when you really think about it, that would make sense. Like, these things are just kind of falling in from the old debris when we get closer, or things like that. Even the stuff that's already here, the mammoths, like you were talking about, they had vegetation in there, and they were feeding the flesh to their sled dogs. It was so fresh when they found those things. It's amazing to really think about it, and it all ties together. It's
also, Tiamat was a water world.
Yeah.
And the oceans now, that's why you find cities 2,000 feet underwater that are these massive pyramid cities completely intact. It's not debris, it's just cities completely submerged off Cuba. National Geographic videotaped it back in 2003. It's never been released. In 2005, they videotaped the Bosnian pyramids. That's never going to be released. I've spoken with Samir, the guy who discovered them, and he's doing the work on these pyramids in Bosnia. They also date back to that time, 12,000 years. And the 1 meter of dirt covering it, that's 12,000 years of coverage. But he has some photos of the ones in Mexico. And those were covered with dirt on one side, like the wind had been blowing them. They got trees growing on that side. They've all been cleaned up now. And the blocks, they were able to prove this guy came in from Egypt. He has a huge title I mentioned in my book. But he discovered that these stones that the pyramids of Egypt were built with are not quarried. They're not cut from the quarry. They're much harder than the quarry. They're actually concrete. And it's a special form of concrete. They've been duplicated. It's harder than stone. It has zero porosity. We cannot build that kind of concrete right now. Bridges would not expand and contract if we could. And all the pyramids were built with that same technology, the one in Mexico and the one in Bosnia and the one in China. We could probably examine that one.
Yeah, when you look at the evidence of that, I'm in carpentry work, and if you had asked me how would I build the pyramids today, I would tell you I'd do it with concrete. I would grind up the limestone and I'd make concrete, and it's easy. That's the easiest building material to work with in the area. So
the walls would be nice and smooth when you're finished.
Exactly, and it'll be perfect, and you'll be like, how did he do that? Because you formed it off the blocks beside it. You could even start at the top. That would make sense. You know what I mean? You could start at the top and just with your forms work that way, and you wouldn't need a base stone to start with. Things like that. There's all kinds of things. When you look at the work that it took just to get the plane of the Giza Plateau flat and the work done below the pyramids, it's just as much as it takes to go above, and if not more. And it's amazing.
I'm not sure if it was Graham Hancock who mentioned the location of the pyramids on Earth, but this individual, they mentioned, what if these things were like acupuncture needles and weights to balance out the Earth, and they're placed in certain locations? What if they were built 12,000 years ago and the Earth was ripped apart from Tiamat 12,000 years ago, then it makes sense that, yeah, these are kind of like balancing points to keep the Earth balanced plus the energy points. That also fits, and it's like everything. It's all the alignments of all the buildings they put together for the rising of the stars at that time. Everything fits.
Yeah, I feel like as soon as we got technologically and scientifically advanced far enough that we were coming into this, this new age of enlightenment, these new energies with our brains. It's just like, it's amazing. We're starting to really see the bigger picture, and I feel like that's why they're so controlling right now and doing this whole push for martial law and everything that we just discussed with them buying all these boats. They're scared. Essentially, they're doing every backup plan they can because they know we're coming together and we're uniting.
And they don't want us to have weapons in our possession when they finally tell us this object's in the sky.
Yeah, exactly. The funny thing is I seen a picture from Switzerland from, it was 8/12, 8/13, and 8/14, and I was watching the webcams, and this huge object lights up the whole sky there for about 2 hours at the same time, 3 nights in a row. I copied it with Stellarium and Solar System Scope. It wasn't the moon. Anything in that direction, it was amazing. It was coming right between Pisces and Sagittarius. So I put it on there. I was hoping other people could kind of find out what it was, but it was really neat to see that. Going on with all those rituals they had in Switzerland, all the gold's there. They got CERN there. I mean, phew. But yeah.
Also, what I found out about Christ was there is a connection between the Annunaki and that religion. If you take the name Yahweh, it's all consonants, and you fill in the vowels, then you flip it backwards and remove those vowels, and you have the words where they're at, and then you read it Annunaki by adding the consonants in Aramaic backwards. So it's kind of like a code, you just reverse it. And one thing that I found that was fascinating, Jesus said that in the end of days, the book of Daniel would be unsealed. Actually, I think it was Daniel who said it, but Jesus mentioned it also, that the book of Daniel would be unsealed. And this guy figured it out. And to get his book, it took nearly a year and a half. I had to keep going back to Barnes & Noble. Where's my book? And, reprocessing everything, trying to get it back. Finally got it from this guy. Never seen it for sale anywhere. I think he was self-published. What he figured out, though, was that the book of Daniel can be read backwards. If you understand Hebrew, it's all consonants, just one after another. There's no periods. There's no question marks. It's just all consonants, a string of it. Yeah. So if you put everything in reverse and read it, then it reads perfectly normal, only it's twice as long. And it reads in these short little compartmentalized sort of poems that all fit in one with the other, kind of like the prodigal son. Before you get to that, you're talking about the 100 sheep, one takes off, you got to go look for it. And then the woman who had the 10 pieces of silver lost one piece at the house, and then you get to the prodigal son. So it's kind of like that all the way through. In the middle, it names the Messiah. It says his name shall be Yeshua, who is Jesus. And you can read it. So it's been broken. It's not even a code. It's just exactly written backwards.
Yeah.
Who has the technology to write a book forward and backward?
Well, that is a code when it is written, properly, and just like that, like you said, it's the whole thing's a codec. Look at the whole book of Revelation. The whole thing is a complex codec. But Daniel, you're saying it's basically, I'm trying to think of the word, anagram. It's when you can actually read it front to back and have two different meanings, but kind of go together, I guess you could say.
Right, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's a couple terms of that, but that's a code. That takes, it's brilliant when you think of the IQ it would take just to think of something like that. So to say it wasn't, these beings, I believe there's an intense connection with the Anunnaki. And if you look at it in that sense, it's almost like a battle plan when you think about it, when they're telling you these dates and times, and we just have the charts. We're just now getting access to astrological charts and things that were like godlike 2,000 years ago. So, yeah, it's the time is definitely near, I believe. I'm a firm believer.
When Daniel was speaking of that statue in the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, I think it was, the top part is gold, right? Now, he described that's one of the kingdoms, and then you got that was Babylon, and the next kingdom, Persians, and then the next kingdom with the Greeks, and then you got the Romans, the iron. But down in the feet, which are two capitals, and now we have two capitals. Everybody says, the U.S. is not in the Bible. The U.S. is the beast. What are you talking about? Who is like the beast? Who can war with the beast? Beautiful on the outside, corrupt to the core on the inside. And now we got our two capitals, Washington, D.C. and Denver. And anyway, the feet, it says, are iron. And it's describing all these nations of men. And they're the metal. But the clay is not men. The clay is different. And in that chapter, it's like chapter 2, and he says that the clay, it's not men. They're mingling themselves with men. They shall mingle their seed. Shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. So if you take these abductions you're getting now with the Greys, and they're taking human seeds and they're mingling them with their DNA, that's exactly what he was talking about. And that's only been happening in the past few decades.
Yeah, I believe the whole thing, when you look at how many, there's even astronomical positions and alignments, and it's all going in sequence. You know, you can't say, even the tetrads, and then when you look at it, that there could have been like 5 or 6 they weren't really blatantly talking about. You know, there was 4 definite, but they could have been alluding to 5 or 6, you know, impartial blood eclipses and things like that. And I just think that it's amazing how it falls right through the signs. Like I said, I kind of look at it like a battle plan, almost like a plan for control when you think about the Annunaki and what they were. And you read all these cultures talking about the dark archons, and, you know, Marduk doing deals with these beings that weren't of Anunnaki or of humankind and things like that. And you look at what's going on, you start to see the bigger picture. I mean,
I've actually encountered these archon things, and they're not. They can be attached to you, and unless someone was doing a scan on you, just their hands work on it, they wouldn't feel it unless they were looking for it. And another thing I've discovered is the information I was giving you earlier about the Lord's canon, humans having come back in 3 waves. Not to save anybody. We weren't trying to save the world, and we weren't human. We came back to save our worlds that were being destroyed because of the reptilians across the galaxy, and to mitigate the destruction here on Earth before the apocalypse. These, I can't remember what I was talking about. Oh, Dolores Cannon.
Yeah, Dolores.
Oh, wow, I cannot remember. It had to do with the timeline we're on. I cannot remember now. Oh, let's go on something else.
I was talking about the archons there, and that's kind of, you picked up from there, attaching themselves and scanning. And
yeah, I can't remember it.
That's fine. We can go on.
Yeah. So, what took place back then? There was a tremendous amount of political reasons for what happened, but the Romans were not cruel and corrupt the way they're shown by Hollywood. They actually tried to follow the rules. This is clearly late where Paul is about to get scourged. He said, "Is it common to scourge a Roman citizen?" Wait a minute, you're a Roman citizen, and they back off. They had laws that they did follow. That if you were a Roman citizen, of course, they didn't really apply to you. Rome, when you were Roman, you had all kinds of bennies. You get free food and free entertainment. Paul was a Roman. He was not a Jew. And there is this one bishop, and he recorded his parents' names and where they came from. And he said that Paul married into the family, the line of the Benjamins, married a woman in there, and then converted to Judaism. That's why he knew so much about the Savior gods, and that's why he didn't really trust that Christ was who they were saying he was. No, those are these ancient religions, and so he kept persecuting them. So when he finally converted, it would almost be like Hitler converting and trying to save Jews afterward.
Yeah,
because he really was hunting them down, and he was incredibly intelligent. You know, he stood out on both sides of the arena there. But the rules were following Christianity. The church is based on the teachings of Paul, not the teachings of Jesus. Paul never met Jesus. He only saw him for a little while. He tried to learn from the disciples. He didn't like what they had to say. And Jesus never said appoint any priest. He never said build churches and create your own little organizations. He always kept going back to the temple. And Paul didn't. Paul only created churches, and he said select men that are above board. They got short hair and only one wife, because he wanted them to fit in with the Roman culture. What happened at that point was Rome was about to destroy Israel. Rome was bankrupt. They were completely broke. And Israel, a lot of people are not aware that when Herod the Great built that temple, that was a valley. It was a huge valley in that area. It was a small hill, the one that supposedly Abraham took his son up there to sacrifice him. And Anyway, it had a huge valley, and it was just a big open area. So what they did, they built these massive blocks, and they can't figure out how could they get these blocks down 100 feet underground. And they're just so massive, and then pile them so high. Well, they're also made of that concrete. That's why they're shaped the way they are. And inside that area are massive rooms and passageways. This has been documented, has been filmed. It was built that way. And that's where the Jews, because they all had to come to the temple once a year. That was part of the deal that they had to do. And they could only have one temple. They couldn't sacrifice anywhere else in the world. They could worship in their synagogue. They could only sacrifice at that one temple. And they came and gave offerings. And they could also put their money in there, like a bank, much like the church's bank today. And so they had all this silver and gold stocked up in this massive structure. So Rome wanted it. And Pilate tried to incite a riot so that he could conquer the Israelites and take over and then get a kickback. This is your share of the wealth. Well, when Vespasian and Titus finally destroyed them, their share of the wealth was a substantial amount. When the Colosseum in Rome was built by Jewish slaves, they've just recently discovered. And there's this huge block that was removed from the Colosseum, and the block has holes in it where the letters used to go. And when you reconstruct it, it states that this was a gift to the people of Rome from the family of Vespasian and Titus. And they did it from pocket change, that the money they had gotten, the Jews. And Rome minted more coins for that destruction, that defeat, than all the other battles put together. Also, Titus, when he entered the city, they created the Ark of Titus. These arks were not given to any general just because they fought a war. They had to be fighting against insurmountable odds. They had to be outnumbered and win the victory still. Now, when he attacked Israel, he had twice as many men as it took Alexander the Great to conquer the world. He had 78,000, like 30,000 cavalry, plus reserves, and engineers to dismantle the walls. So he was not outnumbered, unless you're talking about a god who took the moon and put it in the way of the sun during one of the great celebrations of East of their sun god Sol Invictus. Now you are outnumbered. Now you're outgunned, and he would have received the Ark of Titus for that. So it's really fascinating what really happened there and why Israel was destroyed. And what's fascinating he wanted all the walls apart, disassembled, completely destroyed. He had 4 noblemen assigned to that task. He had special engineers. And Hagar did not disassemble the Wailing Wall. He left it in place. So Titus summoned him, and these are well recorded. And I don't think the Jews would have recorded his information if they knew it had any evidence to back up what Christ did and who he was. Because he asked Hagar, why didn't you disobey me? Why didn't you disassemble that wall? He said, well, I think that if we don't leave this wall there for as a monument to your glory, in 1,000 years, people will doubt that Jews ever existed or that this temple was ever here. So I left it to glory. And so he let it stand. But when Titus entered the temple to destroy it, he said something, and it's quoted in the Talmud. He said, who is greater, a king who can best another king in the desert, referring to Alexander the Great, or a king who can best a king in his own palace? So the Jews had no king, unless you're referring to Jesus. So I think that statement was for that. And he did defile the throne. He had a pig with him. He killed the pig, sprayed the blood on there. He had some whores. He had sex with the whores. I don't know if he had sex with the pig, but he defiled the altar. And what Jesus was referring to with the desolation that's supposed to take place with the altar, the destruction of it, that's already happened. The temple has been destroyed 3 times. It will not be rebuilt. If it is rebuilt, wouldn't the Jews start sacrificing again? So he said, the door I closed, no one will be able to open. That's in 2 different Gospels. He's referring to the temple. It's destroyed and it's not going to be rebuilt.
Yeah, I feel like when they do that, it's almost, think about the book of Enoch too. It clearly points him as the Messiah. So, I mean, how are they going to have it in the Old Testament? It basically proves their religion, kind of proves they got left behind with their religion. Not their religion's wrong, but they kind of got left behind and became part of the story, it's editorial oversight, if you will. You know, it's funny how it happens. But as technology and things come on, even the internet, I feel like the internet is very empowering to people when it comes through knowledge and networking, and just even how me and you met. I mean, I feel like me and you clicked on many different levels, and I agree with you on pretty much fully on every level. So, and I'm even, it's funny, if you'd have watched some of my videos I've already made, I've actually touched on some of the stuff you're talking on. So it's amazing how we have these connections and how we are kind of overpowering with these odds stacked against us. So it's amazing to me. I kind of gives me hope, if anything.
The awakening, what everybody's waiting for, there's an event that's coming, and they call it the event. That's what the cabal called it. But are you aware that they've actually broken the codes in Rennes-le-Chateau, the ones left behind by Saunier, all the codes he left behind so that someone could re-find what he discovered? It's a book. It's actually a video called Holy Blood. And it wasn't well known. I rented it. Take a look at it. I actually bought it. This video is about these individuals who are in Rennes-le-Chateau over in France, the church made famous by the Da Vinci Code. And they were trying to break Saunier's code and find out where this led, what was the treasure, what was it that he hid. And it was to do with the demon Asmodeus. Asmodeus is kind of tilted. He's kind of at a weird angle. They call him the lame demon. And he's not tilted. If you were to take an exact duplicate of him, recreate the statue from plaster of Paris or something, or just cardboard, and then you take that statue and you place it in the armchair of the devil up at the Circle of the Spring. There's a rock that's hewed out to look like a seat. Then all of a sudden, Asmodeus is leaning forward, his eyes kind of bulging in one direction. And in that direction, they found that there was a small mound. So they dug behind the mound, dug under the mound. They found a flat stone. Under the stone was chiseled some symbols. And under that was a bottle of wine with a message written in code and signed by Saunier. That led them to the next code, and they had to go into the church and look at the different locations of the stations of the cross to decipher that code. And then that led them to another code in another bottle. And it finally led them to a temple that's buried there. And I knew it was a temple buried there from the paintings of Poussin, the Shepherds of Arcadia. Where the Shepherds of Arcadia are, there's a hill on the right that resembles an old palace, an old fortress of the Templars. And then on the left is another one in the distance. But behind them is a hill. That hill doesn't exist behind the actual tomb in Arcadia. So one of those hills over there covers a temple that's a duplicate of the Temple of Solomon. And there's a tremendous amount of treasure from the Templars in that temple. And this guy found it. He rediscovered its location.
So is that a replica of Al-Aqsa, or is that actually what they refer to as Solomon's Temple, or was Solomon's Temple like a ploy, or how do you explain that? I'm kind of interested in it. That's all. Well,
Solomon built several temples throughout the world. He had some in the Congo. He had some over in Persia, Asia, that area.
Yeah, because they talk about it. They say it was like the last temple or the third temple, Al-Aqsa. I mean, it has a literal translation of, I think, the last temple. So that would be Solomon's Temple, I believe. That's how that's where I found out. It seemed like when the Knights of Malta or whatever got there, they seemed to find treasure there.
Another temple at Elephantine Island over in where's the ark? Where they found the books of Enoch, that country, Ethiopia?
Yeah.
There's an island there. I think it's called Elephantine Island, and there's an exact replica of that temple on the ground because Solomon had his first son was born to Sheba, who is also the queen of the south. And when his son Malek was of age, she sent him back to be recognized. The priest refused for him to be allowed to be king of Israel, so he had to be sent away. And Solomon said, well, if my firstborn will be sent away, then all your firstborns must be sent away. But the firstborns were the caretakers of the Ark of the Covenant. So the Ark of the Covenant was sent to Ethiopia with them, and another temple built there, and priests do all the work there as well.
Yeah, that was the specific treasure I was talking about. So yeah, it's actually neat to see that. When you were like I said, the literal translation just said like the last temple. So I mean, when you think that's the last place it came to rest, right? Before, well, as the book was written, you know. So anything after, you know, obviously, who knows where it is now? But it's very. It all points to the same. I mean, it's funny to see when you really read between the lines, and when you can go back to the Hebrew. And who's the author? Mauro Belishno. Are you familiar with his work?
No.
He was a Vatican transfer. He was actually translator for the Vatican. He was hired by the Vatican to translate the books for him.
Okay, yeah. He did the Sanskrit with the word. It looks like a UFO.
He got fired. They eventually fired him there a couple years ago because he kind of went public with information.
And they can't print the encyclopedias because his name's on them.
Yeah, and he's got what he just showed basically that it says those who are cast down. That's a more accurate translation and things like that. There's in different terms. He was just showing you like the hidden we and stuff in Genesis is definitely there because if it was taken the other way, it would be described as a verb, and that usage would make no sense. I mean, how would a verb? You understand?
Well, the word spirit, it's called ruh. And there's 5 meanings for it, which that's where our Bibles grew up. These guys did not understand the language when it was translated. And one of the meanings is spirit, the spirit inside you. Another meaning is the wind, because the wind is like spirit. Feel it, it can move things, but you don't see it. And then pride is one of the words for ruha. One of the meanings, a spirited horse has a lot of pride up. And then a hothead, someone who's angry, it's the power and spirit. But the last one is a weird translation. It means rheumatism. So that lady who was bent over in the spirit and touched the hem of his garment and was healed, she had rheumatism. So we really don't understand the language very well at all, and their idioms that they had. It's really amazing what you find in the words. And the word rupa, I don't remember the name of the gentleman you were speaking of, but he draws a picture of it, what it looked like, the first symbol, and it's a UFO. And it's got waves underneath it, meaning it hovered over water. This particular vessel hovered over water, and there was another vessel, he gets the name of that one. I don't remember that name, but he said if that one was following you and you ran into water or started swimming in the water, you weren't going to get an anal probe that day. That's the way he says it. Follow you. But the Ruha could move over water. And if you go back to Genesis, and it says, and the Spirit of the Lord moved over the waters. Well, translate it the way it's said. And the Ruha, the vehicle of the Elohim, hovered over the surface of the waters. They're flying over the earth, examining it.
It's amazing.
Instruction to rebuild it.
Yeah, it's all straightforward right there. I mean, like I said, you got to just look at the words of transition. We are, like, let's create him in our image. You think like, who's he talking to? Who's we? Who's they? Who's us? And who's our? Officially. And you can tell that they tried to, if you look at the King James Version, you see that if you compare it to, because there's a lot of websites that'll compare every known version, and you can sit there and read that same verse out of every known little Bible, you see that they're really pushing to change the terminology here and there, especially with Lucifer, Morning Star, things like that. They just started changing key words, and I feel like that would be one of them if they took out we are and said like, let me create him in my image instead of, something like that. Like if they started transitioning, it'd be lost in culture forever.
Men who've done the research on that phrase, when it says let us create, it's really more of a recreate word, but it's a specific word. And when they say love, there's like 8 words for that. One is a passionate love, one is a brotherly love, one is kinship kind of love. Well, this word to make, it's the word you would use to take something and make it something else. Kind of like you take a cat and make it glow in the dark and you patent it. Well, you didn't make a cat out of nothing. The cat was already there. You just modified it. And that's the exact wording. It was something they took that was there. They modified it, put their image on it, their imprint on it, and then patented it, I guess.
Yeah.
So that was us.
Yeah, I believe that's that first species they made. A lot of them, different cultures refer to it, the Brotherhood of the Serpent, or the Children of the Elohim, or however you want to look at it. Or not, yeah, the Children of the Serpent, not the Brotherhood. Sorry, Homo Atlantis is what I call it, because you really think about it, it's like they made it too good, and it became rebellious and realized, hey, I don't need to be your slave, and blam, kind of revolted, and that was like their first mistake. So you really look through there, and it was just almost like an experiment when you look at it, and it's neat. And not to cut you short this evening, but if you'd like to come back on, I'd like to have you on, but I have a few things to do this evening, so I'd like to kind of cut you off here, and if you'd like to come back on here in a week or two and kind of just pick up and kind of have another conversation, we can.
That's great. There's on Amazon, the Book Incredulous, there's a look inside feature, and you can read the first 16 pages. If you sign on to Amazon, you can read 10%, which is like up to page 38. That will give you more than enough of the information. I left out all of the documentation or the information where I got it from, because it would have added 150 pages to it. And it was just, I didn't want that in the back of the book. I'll probably release that if people want that information. I'm being asked for that information a lot. Where did you get this information? So I'll definitely be releasing that. I have it all. I wanted it to remain as a novel.
Yeah, you'll also be able to write future books too. So if you ever wanted to take a different approach and write in that stuff later, that's fine. But the first book is already a very huge undertaking. I can't remember H.G. Wells. He said, whoever would take on this big crazy monster's got to be insane. It was funny to see how he spoke about it. It's a passion that it grows inside, and I'm really glad to see that you took a very noble route with this, and I feel like that you're just spreading the truth, and I appreciate that. I really do. I think everybody needs to get out there and check out Incredulous and go ahead and support real authors like this, So if you'd like to add anything before we go, yeah.
The second book, there'll only be 2 books. The second book is titled Dragon Slayer, and it basically has to do with the downfall of the Draconians. The title of this book, it was going to be different, and I'm a driver. I was driving, and this word just came from a distance and hovered in front of my, over the street where I was driving, and I could read it very clearly, incredulous. I know that word. What does it mean? It means unwilling or unable to believe, difficult to wrap your mind around. So wow, that is a perfect title. That's why I chose.
That is beautiful. It's I'm actually I feel like we were kind of brought together for a good reason. So I believe that you're going to get a good response out of this. I just kind of feel it in my heart. So yeah, I hope I connect you to other people like me that are interested and definitely interested in what you have to say. So thanks for coming on, and I'll be sure to stay in contact with you here, and I'll see if I can get you on here maybe a week or two. Kind of have a conversation.
Thank you.
All right. It was nice talking to you. You have a good evening.
You too.